The crisp December air wrapped around London like a cozy blanket, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of pine and roasted chestnuts. The city was alive with twinkling lights strung across streets, shop windows adorned with festive displays, and carolers singing cheerful tunes on every corner. It was that time of year again, the season of giving, reflection, and togetherness. And at the heart of this tradition stood one event that brought people from all walks of life together: the annual Christmas Carol service at Westminster Abbey. For centuries, Westminster Abbey had been more than just a historic landmark. It was a symbol of unity, faith, and continuity. Its towering spires and intricate Gothic architecture seemed almost otherworldly under the glow of soft winter light. Inside its ancient walls, countless stories had unfolded: coronations, royal weddings, memorials for beloved figures. And now, it was set to host yet another chapter in its storied history. This year's service held special significance because it marked King Charles II's first appearance as monarch since ascending the throne after the passing of his mother, Queen Elizabeth I. As the day approached, excitement rippled through the city. People buzzed about what the new king might wear or how Prince William and Princess Kate would look. Speculation swirled, but everyone agreed on one thing: the royal family always brought a sense of warmth and dignity to these occasions. They weren't just attending a ceremony, they were part of something much bigger. Their presence reminded people of traditions passed down through generations while also pointing toward the future. Behind the scenes, preparations were underway. At Buckingham Palace, staff bustled about ensuring everything was perfect. From polishing ceremonial attire to coordinating transportation, no detail was too small. Meanwhile, King Charles found himself lost in thought. Standing by a window overlooking the palace gardens, he gazed out at the frost-covered grounds. His mind wandered back to memories of walking alongside his mother during similar events. He could still picture her calm demeanor, her reassuring smile, and the way she carried herself with quiet strength. Now, the mantle rested on his shoulders, and though he felt the weight of responsibility, he also knew this moment was an opportunity to honor her legacy and forge his own path. Prince William and Princess Kate, meanwhile, were busy preparing their young family for the occasion. George, Charlotte, and Louis buzzed with excitement, peppering their parents with questions. "Do I have to wear gloves?" little Louis asked, holding up a pair of woolen mittens. Kate laughed softly, smoothing down his hair. "Yes, darling, but only if you want warm hands," she replied. William chimed in, teasingly reminding them to behave themselves during the service. Despite the playful banter, there was an underlying seriousness. Both William and Kate understood the importance of representing not just their family but the nation itself. Outside the palace gates, anticipation built among the public. Crowds began gathering early, clutching cups of hot cocoa and scarves wrapped tightly against the chill. Some came for the spectacle, others out of respect for tradition, and many simply to feel connected to something greater than themselves. Street vendors sold mulled wine and mince pies, adding to the festive atmosphere. Children pointed excitedly at the mounted police officers guiding traffic, while adults exchanged stories of past Christmases spent watching the royals make their way to the Abbey. By late afternoon, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city. Lights flickered on, illuminating the route the royal motorcade would take. The stage was set. For King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Kate, this wasn't just another formal engagement. It was a chance to connect with their subjects, to share in the joy and hope that defined the holiday season. As they prepared to leave the palace, the world watched and waited, ready to witness a moment steeped in history yet brimming with promise. Inside Buckingham Palace, the air buzzed with quiet energy. Staff members moved briskly through the grand halls, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets, carrying trays of tea and freshly pressed garments. The palace, usually a place of calm elegance, felt alive with purpose as preparations for the evening's event reached their final stages. Every corner seemed to hum with anticipation, From the kitchens where chefs carefully arranged festive treats to the drawing rooms where last-minute adjustments were made to outfits, King Charles stood near a large window in one of the private chambers, his hands clasped behind his back. His gaze drifted over the frost-kissed gardens below, but his mind was far away. He thought about the countless times he had accompanied his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, to similar events. Her poise, her grace, her unwavering dedication to duty. It all came rushing back to him now. Those memories were bittersweet, tinged with both pride and sorrow. Now, as king, he carried not only her legacy, but also the hopes and expectations of an entire nation. It was a daunting responsibility, yet it filled him with determination. Tonight wasn't just about tradition. It was about stepping into his role fully, showing the world that the monarchy remained steadfast even in changing times. Down the hall, Prince William and Princess Kate worked together to ensure their children were ready for the occasion. Little George fidgeted in his smart navy blue suit, tugging at the collar as if it might suddenly loosen itself. "Do I have to wear this tie?" he groaned, earning a chuckle from his father. "Afraid so, mate," William replied, ruffling his son's hair. "But you'll look smashing. Trust me." Charlotte, ever the picture of composure, sat patiently on a velvet chair, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles in her red dress. She glanced up at her mother, who was fastening earrings shaped like delicate snowflakes. "Money, can I wear jewelry like that when I'm older?" she asked innocently. Kate smiled warmly, kneeling beside her daughter. "Of course, sweetheart. And I think you'll look absolutely beautiful." Louis, the youngest, darted around the room, giggling as he pretended to be a knight charging into battle. His playful antics brought laughter to everyone present, lightening the mood. Even the usually reserved King Charles couldn't help but grin when Louis ran up to him, brandishing an invisible sword. "Grandpa, watch out. Dragons are coming," the little boy declared dramatically. For a brief moment, the weight of the crown seemed to lift, replaced by pure joy. Charles scooped Louis into his arms, pretending to fend off the imaginary beasts. "Fear not, brave knight," he said with mock seriousness. "We shall protect the kingdom together." Amidst the light-hearted moments, however, there was an undeniable sense of gravity. Both William and Kate understood the significance of tonight's service, not just for their family, but for the country. As they helped the children adjust their coats and scarves, they exchanged knowing glances. They knew that beyond the glittering lights and cheerful carols lay deeper responsibilities. Their presence at Westminster Abbey wasn't merely ceremonial, it was symbolic. It represented continuity, stability, and hope during uncertain times. Kate paused for a moment, looking at her reflection in the mirror. Her emerald green dress shimmered softly under the chandelier's glow, its rich color chosen deliberately to evoke the spirit of Christmas. She adjusted the silver brooch pinned to her lapel, a gift from William years ago, and took a deep breath. Despite the nerves that occasionally surfaced, she reminded herself why they did this: to serve, to connect, to inspire. Beside her, William straightened his tie, his expression thoughtful. He thought about the crowds waiting outside, the families gathered around televisions, and the millions watching online. Each person had their own story, their own struggles and triumphs. And for one night, they would come together under the same roof, or screen, to celebrate something greater than themselves. As the clock ticked closer to departure time, the family gathered in the grand foyer. The children lined up neatly, though Louis still squirmed slightly, unable to contain his excitement. King Charles joined them, his posture regal yet approachable. He looked at his grandchildren, then at William and Kate, and felt a swell of pride. Together, they represented not just the future of the monarchy, but the enduring bond between the royal family and the people they served. With a nod to signal readiness, they stepped out into the chilly December evening, ready to face whatever awaited them beyond the palace gates. As dusk settled over London, the royal motorcade prepared to leave Buckingham Palace, gliding smoothly through streets that sparkled with festive cheer. The city was alive with anticipation, its residents bundled up against the December chill, but eager to catch a glimpse of the royal family. Streetlights cast golden pools onto cobblestones, and shop windows displayed twinkling lights and elaborate holiday scenes. It was a magical evening, the kind that made even the busiest Londoner pause and take in the beauty around them. Outside the palace gates, crowds had begun gathering hours earlier, armed with thermoses of hot chocolate, woolen scarves, and cameras ready to capture the moment. Families huddled together, children perched on their parents' shoulders for a better view. Some held small Union Jack flags, waving them enthusiastically as the first black SUV emerged from the palace driveway. Cheers erupted, echoing down the wide avenue. "There they are," someone shouted, pointing toward the sleek vehicles adorned with discreet royal insignias. The excitement was palpable, a mix of reverence and pure joy. Inside the lead car, King Charles sat quietly, his hands resting gently on his knees. He glanced out the tinted window, taking in the sea of smiling faces lining the route. There was something profoundly moving about seeing so many people turn out on a cold winter night just to share in this tradition. Each wave, each cheer, felt like a reminder of why he had dedicated his life to service. Beside him, Prince William and Princess Kate exchanged soft smiles, their own reflections visible in the glass. They too were watching the crowd, noting the way strangers greeted one another warmly, united by the shared experience. The motorcade moved slowly, allowing the royal family to acknowledge those who had braved the cold to see them. At certain points, the cars came to a brief stop, giving the royals a chance to step out momentarily. When this happened, the energy surged. People leaned forward, straining for a closer look. A young girl holding a handmade sign that read "Merry Christmas, Your Majesties," caught Kate's eye. The princess stepped out briefly, crouching down to accept the gift, a tiny paper snowflake tied with ribbon, and thanked the child with a warm hug. The girl beamed, her cheeks flushed pink from both the cold and excitement. Nearby, William shook hands with a veteran wearing medals proudly pinned to his coat, exchanging a few words before returning to the car. Throughout the journey, snippets of conversation drifted into the vehicle. "They're so kind," one woman murmured to her friend. "Always making time for us." Another man nearby added, "It's not just about the pomp, it's about connection. That's what makes them special." These comments weren't lost on the royal family. Though they couldn't hear every word, they understood the sentiment behind it. For centuries, the monarchy had been a symbol of continuity, but tonight, it was clear that its strength lay in its ability to adapt, to remain relevant in a rapidly changing world. As the motorcade approached Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere grew even more electric. The abbey loomed ahead, its ancient spires illuminated by spotlights that made it appear almost ethereal. The closer they got, the louder the cheers became, blending with the distant sound of carolers practicing hymns inside. Reporters jostled for position along the barricades, snapping photos and shouting questions. Flashbulbs popped like fireflies, capturing every angle of the scene. For a brief moment, the weight of expectation hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just any event. It was a cornerstone of British culture, steeped in history yet pulsing with modern relevance. King Charles turned to William and Kate, his expression thoughtful. "Ready?" he asked simply. They nodded, their resolve steady. Whatever nerves they might have felt melted away as they reminded themselves of the purpose of the evening, to bring people together, to celebrate faith, hope, and community. Finally, the motorcade pulled up to the Abbey steps. Doors opened, and the royal family stepped out into the crisp night air. Applause thundered around them, a tidal wave of goodwill washing over the scene. Children waved furiously, adults clapped rhythmically, and somewhere in the distance, a choir began singing Silent Night. It was a moment suspended in time, where past met present, and tradition intertwined with hope for the future. As they ascended the steps toward the grand entrance, the royal family carried not only their roles, but also the collective spirit of a nation eager to embrace the magic of Christmas. Westminster Abbey stood before them, a masterpiece of history and architecture bathed in the soft glow of spotlights. Its towering spires reached skyward, as if trying to touch the heavens themselves, while intricate carvings adorned its ancient stone facade. The air was crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of evergreen wreaths and candle wax from inside. As the royal family stepped out of their vehicles onto the red carpet leading up to the Abbey's grand entrance, the scene erupted into applause once again. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing every detail. The king's dignified stride, Prince William's reassuring smile, and Princess Kate's graceful elegance. King Charles paused for a moment at the bottom of the steps, turning slightly to acknowledge the crowd gathered behind barriers. His eyes scanned the sea of faces, young and old, locals and tourists alike, all united by the shared anticipation of this special evening. He gave a small nod and a warm smile, his gloved hand rising briefly in greeting. It was a simple gesture, but it carried immense meaning. For many in the crowd, that fleeting acknowledgement felt personal, as though he had connected directly with them. A young boy holding a stuffed reindeer waved enthusiastically, shouting, "Merry Christmas, Your Majesty." The king chuckled softly, waving back before continuing his ascent. Behind him, Prince William and Princess Kate followed closely, their presence radiating both poise and approachability. Kate's emerald green dress shimmered under the lights, perfectly complementing the festive atmosphere. She walked with ease, her posture impeccable yet relaxed, occasionally glancing at the crowd with a gentle smile. Beside her, William moved with quiet confidence, his navy blue coat tailored to perfection. Together, they made an effortlessly striking pair, embodying the balance between tradition and modernity that the monarchy sought to represent. As they climbed the steps, reporters shouted questions, hoping for sound bites or reactions. "How are you feeling tonight, Your Majesty?" one voice called out. Another asked, "Any special messages for the public this Christmas?" While no direct answers were given, the warmth in their expressions spoke volumes. They understood the power of symbolism. Sometimes actions said more than words ever could. At the top of the stairs, a line of clergy members and abbey officials awaited the royal party. Handshakes were exchanged, accompanied by murmured greetings and well wishes. Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby stepped forward, offering a respectful bow to King Charles. "Welcome, Your Majesty," he said warmly, his tone filled with sincerity. "It is an honor to have you here." Charles responded with a polite nod, his voice steady as he replied, "Thank you, Archbishop. We are grateful to be part of such a meaningful tradition." Inside the abbey, the grandeur was breathtaking. Rows of wooden pews stretched toward the altar, each seat meticulously prepared for the evening's guests. Stained glass windows depicted biblical scenes, their colors muted in the dim light but still captivating. High above, the vaulted ceiling soared, creating a sense of awe that few structures could match. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh flowers arranged in ornate vases along the aisles. Soft instrumental music played in the background, setting a reverent tone for what was to come. The royal family took their designated seats near the front, surrounded by dignitaries, charity representatives, and other distinguished guests. As they settled in, there was a brief pause, a moment of stillness amidst the flurry of activity. King Charles leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze fixed ahead. He seemed lost in thought, perhaps reflecting on the centuries of history embedded within these walls. Beside him, William whispered something to Kate, his lips curving into a subtle grin. Whatever he said brought a soft laugh from her, breaking the solemnity just enough to remind everyone that beneath the crowns and titles, they were human too. Outside, the crowd began to disperse slowly, satisfied that they had witnessed the arrival of their beloved royals. Some lingered, reluctant to leave the magical ambience of the abbey grounds. Others snapped final photos, capturing the illuminated building against the darkening sky. Inside, however, the focus shifted. The stage was set, the congregation seated, and the sense of anticipation grew thicker with each passing second. Westminster Abbey, steeped in centuries of tradition, was ready to host another unforgettable chapter in its storied history. And as the opening notes of the first hymn began to echo through the nave, it became clear that this night would be remembered not just as a celebration of faith, but as a testament to unity, hope, and the enduring spirit of Christmas. The service began with a hush falling over the congregation, as if the very air inside Westminster Abbey had grown heavier with reverence. The first notes of O come, Emmanuel rose from the choir, their voices pure and haunting, filling the vast space with a sound that seemed to transcend time itself. It was impossible not to feel moved. Even those who weren't particularly religious found themselves drawn into the moment, carried away by the sheer beauty of the music and the weight of history surrounding them. King Charles sat upright, his hands resting on his knees, his expression thoughtful yet serene. His eyes were fixed ahead, but it was clear his mind was reflecting deeply on the words being sung. Prince William and Princess Kate sat side by side, their demeanor calm and attentive. Kate's gloved hands clasped loosely in her lap, while William occasionally glanced at the program resting on his knee. Though they appeared composed, there was an unmistakable warmth about them, a quiet connection that made them relatable even in such a formal setting. When the hymn ended, the Archbishop stepped forward to deliver the opening prayer. His voice resonated through the abbey, rich and steady, inviting everyone to pause and reflect on the true meaning of Christmas: peace, hope, and love. As the service unfolded, readings alternated between scripture passages and poems, carefully chosen to inspire reflection. One particularly poignant reading came from the book of Isaiah, its words echoing themes of light overcoming darkness. When it was Prince William's turn to take the lectern, a ripple of anticipation passed through the congregation. He stood tall, adjusting the microphone slightly before beginning. His voice, clear and measured, commanded attention without ever feeling overbearing. As he read aloud, his words painted vivid images of hope and resilience. "The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light," he intoned, pausing briefly to let the phrase sink in. There was something profoundly moving about hearing these ancient verses spoken by someone so closely tied to the future of the monarchy. When William returned to his seat, Kate leaned over to whisper something to him. Whatever she said brought a faint smile to his face, softening the gravity of the moment just enough to remind everyone that behind the titles, they were simply a couple sharing this experience together. Later, when it came time for the congregation to join in singing "Hark, the Herald Angels Sing," Kate's soprano blended seamlessly with the harmonies around her. Her voice wasn't showy or overpowering. It was gentle, heartfelt, and perfectly in tune with the spirit of the evening. Throughout the service, small moments of humanity shone through. At one point, little Princess Charlotte shifted slightly in her seat, tugging at the hem of her dress. George, sitting beside her, whispered something that made her giggle softly. Their parents exchanged amused glances, but didn't scold them. After all, children were part of the fabric of life, and their presence added authenticity to the occasion. Even King Charles couldn't suppress a small chuckle when Louis squirmed in his seat, clearly struggling to stay still for too long. Between hymns and readings, there were moments of silence, spaces left intentionally for personal reflection. During one such pause, King Charles bowed his head, closing his eyes briefly as though offering a silent prayer. It was a gesture that spoke volumes about his faith and his sense of duty. Beside him, William mirrored the action, his own thoughts likely drifting to the responsibilities he would one day inherit. For both men, this service wasn't just about tradition. It was about finding strength and guidance in something greater than themselves. Outside, the cold December night pressed against the abbey's thick walls, but inside, warmth radiated, not just from the candles flickering along the aisles, but also from the collective spirit of those gathered. Strangers shared smiles, families held hands, and friends exchanged knowing looks. The abbey, steeped in centuries of history, felt alive with purpose. Every note sung, every word spoken, served as a reminder of why traditions like this mattered. They connected people across generations, cultures, and beliefs. As the final hymn approached, the congregation rose to their feet, joining voices in a powerful rendition of Joy to the World. The sound swelled, filling every corner of the abbey, until it seemed to spill out into the night beyond. In that moment, differences faded away, replaced by a shared sense of joy and gratitude. For King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Kate, it was a reminder of their role, not as distant figures on a pedestal, but as participants in a community bound together by faith, hope, and the enduring magic of Christmas. As the final hymn faded into silence, a palpable sense of reverence lingered in the air. The congregation remained standing for a moment, allowing the echoes of Joy to the World to settle before taking their seats once more. Archbishop Justin Welby stepped forward again, his presence commanding yet comforting as he prepared to deliver the closing remarks. His voice, steady and warm, carried across the abbey, weaving together themes of gratitude, resilience, and unity. Tonight, he began, we gather not only to celebrate the birth of Christ, but also to honor the spirit of compassion that defines this season. He paused, glancing toward the royal family seated near the front. We are deeply grateful for the continued dedication of our monarch and his family, to their duties, to their faith, and most importantly, to the people they serve. The Archbishop's words resonated throughout the abbey, drawing murmurs of agreement from the crowd. It wasn't just flattery. It was an acknowledgement of the symbolic role the royals played in uniting a nation during challenging times. He went on to speak about the importance of community, emphasizing how acts of kindness, no matter how small, could ripple outward and create lasting change. In a world often divided by differences, let us remember what brings us together: love, hope, and the shared desire for peace. As he spoke, King Charles nodded thoughtfully, his expression one of quiet reflection. Beside him, Prince William leaned slightly forward, listening intently, while Kate clasped her hands gently in her lap, her gaze soft but focused. When the Archbishop concluded his address, he offered a blessing, a heartfelt invocation for health, happiness, and harmony in the coming year. The congregation responded with a resounding Amen, their voices blending into a single unified sound. It was a powerful reminder that despite individual backgrounds or beliefs, everyone present was connected by something greater than themselves. The service drew to a close with the organist playing a triumphant recessional piece. The grand pipes of the abbey's historic organ roared to life, filling the space with music so majestic it seemed to lift the very stones of the building. Ushers guided the royal family and other dignitaries out first, followed by the rest of the attendees. King Charles led the way, walking slowly down the central aisle with measured steps. His posture was regal, yet there was a humility in his demeanor, a quiet acknowledgement of the weight of tradition resting on his shoulders. Behind him, Prince William and Princess Kate walked side by side, their movements synchronized in a way that felt both natural and practiced. Kate's emerald dress shimmered softly under the abbey's lights, catching the eyes of those around her. She exchanged brief smiles with familiar faces in the congregation, her warmth bridging any perceived distance between royalty and subject. William, meanwhile, occasionally glanced at his children, ensuring they stayed close as they made their way toward the exit. Little George held his sister Charlotte's hand tightly, while Louis skipped along happily, seemingly oblivious to the formality of the occasion. Outside the abbey, the cold night air greeted them like a refreshing embrace. Snowflakes had begun to fall lightly, dusting the ground with a delicate layer of white. The scene was almost magical, the ancient abbey illuminated against the dark sky, its spires reaching upward as if in prayer. Reporters and photographers lined the perimeter, capturing every detail of the royal departure. King Charles paused briefly to thank members of the clergy who had participated in the service, shaking hands and exchanging quiet words of appreciation. His gestures were simple but meaningful, reinforcing the idea that leadership was as much about connection as it was about ceremony. Prince William and Kate lingered a bit longer, engaging warmly with representatives from charitable organizations supported by the royal family. These interactions were always genuine, marked by sincere curiosity and respect. One woman, representing a children's literacy program, handed Kate a small handmade card crafted by students. Kate accepted it with a smile, thanking her profusely before tucking it carefully into her clutch. Moments like these highlighted the human side of the monarchy, their willingness to listen, to care, and to champion causes larger than themselves. As the royal family finally made their way back to their vehicles, the crowd outside erupted into applause once more. Children waved enthusiastically, some holding up drawings or letters they hoped might reach the royals. A young boy shouted, "Merry Christmas, Prince George," eliciting laughter from those nearby. For a fleeting moment, the barriers between royalty and citizen dissolved, replaced by a shared sense of goodwill and celebration. Inside the car, as they prepared to leave, King Charles turned to William and Kate, his expression thoughtful. "Well done," he said simply, his tone carrying both pride and encouragement. They nodded, understanding that tonight wasn't just about fulfilling obligations. It was about fostering connections, inspiring hope, and reminding people of the enduring magic of Christmas. As the motorcade pulled away, the snow continued to fall, blanketing London in a quiet beauty that mirrored the spirit of the evening. Peaceful, hopeful, and full of promise. As the royal family stepped out of Westminster Abbey into the softly falling snow, the atmosphere shifted from solemn reverence to a more intimate and joyful energy. The air was crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and the muffled sounds of carolers still singing nearby. Tiny flakes drifted lazily from the sky, landing gently on shoulders and hats, adding an almost magical touch to the scene. It was as if nature itself had conspired to make this moment unforgettable. King Charles paused at the top of the Abbey steps, turning slightly to take in the sight before him. The crowd that had gathered outside remained undeterred by the cold, their faces glowing with excitement under the soft glow of streetlights. Some held up phones to capture the moment, while others simply stood there, smiling warmly as they waved Union Jack flags or called out cheerful greetings. "God bless you all," someone shouted, their voice ringing clear in the chilly night air. The king raised a gloved hand in acknowledgement, his smile genuine and appreciative. For a man who had spent decades preparing for this role, these small moments of connection meant everything. Behind him, Prince William and Princess Kate moved among the well-wishers, taking time to greet individuals who had waited hours just to catch a glimpse of them. Kate bent down to speak with a young girl clutching a stuffed teddy bear wearing a tiny Santa hat. "What's your bear's name?" she asked kindly, her tone warm and inviting. The child hesitated for a moment before replying shyly. "Snowflake." Kate laughed softly, remarking how fitting the name was given the weather. She then reached into her bag and pulled out the handmade card she'd received earlier inside the Abbey, showing it to the girl. "Look what some other children made for me tonight," she said. "Maybe you can draw something like this too." William, meanwhile, engaged with members of charitable organizations supported by the royal family. One man representing a veterans group shook his hand firmly, thanking him for shining a spotlight on their work. "It makes such a difference when people know we're here," the man said earnestly. William nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We're grateful for everything you do," he replied. "You inspire us." These interactions weren't rehearsed. They were heartfelt exchanges that highlighted the importance of mutual respect and gratitude. Even little George, Charlotte, and Louis joined in where they could. George, ever the curious one, tugged at his father's sleeve and pointed toward a group of children holding signs that read "Merry Christmas, Royals." With William's encouragement, he approached them, offering a bashful wave. Charlotte, always poised beyond her years, handed out small candy canes she brought along specifically for the occasion. And Louis decided the snow was far too tempting to ignore. He crouched down, scooping up a handful and attempting to shape it into a snowball, much to the delight of the crowd, who chuckled at his antics. The media buzzed around them, capturing every interaction, every laugh, every tender moment. Reporters shouted questions, hoping for sound bites, but the royals seemed unfazed. Instead, they focused on the people in front of them, the families bundled up against the cold, the elderly couple holding hands, the teenagers snapping selfies. Each person represented a thread in the larger tapestry of the nation, and the royal family understood their role as weavers of that fabric. Before climbing back into their cars, King Charles took one final look at the scene. He turned to William and Kate, placing a reassuring hand on each of their shoulders. "This is why we do what we do," he said quietly, his voice tinged with emotion. "To remind people that even in difficult times, there is hope, there is joy." His words hung in the air, simple yet profound, encapsulating the essence of not just this evening, but the monarchy's enduring purpose. As the motorcade prepared to depart, the crowd began to disperse slowly, reluctantly leaving behind the magic of the moment. Children clutched their parents' hands tightly, recounting every detail of what they'd seen. Adults exchanged stories of past Christmases spent watching similar events unfold. And somewhere in the distance, church bells began to toll, marking the hour and signaling the start of another chapter in this timeless tradition. For King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Kate, the evening wasn't over yet. Ahead lay Windsor Castle, where fires crackled in hearths and festive decorations adorned every room. But for now, as the snow continued to fall and the city sparkled under twinkling lights, they allowed themselves a quiet moment of satisfaction. They had done more than attend a service. They had strengthened bonds, spread cheer, and reminded everyone present of the true spirit of Christmas: love, unity, and hope. The motorcade glided smoothly through the snow-dusted streets of London, its path illuminated by the golden glow of streetlights and the occasional flash of cameras from lingering reporters. Inside the car, the atmosphere was calm but reflective. King Charles sat quietly, gazing out the window as the city blurred past. The weight of the evening, the hymns, the prayers, the warmth of the crowd, still lingered in his mind. He thought about the faces he had seen, the hands he had shaken, and the stories shared by ordinary people whose lives were anything but ordinary. Each interaction reminded him that the monarchy wasn't just a symbol. It was a living, breathing connection to the nation. Beside him, Prince William and Princess Kate exchanged soft smiles, their expressions a mix of relief and contentment. The evening had gone well, better than they could have hoped. They had fulfilled their duties with grace, but more importantly, they had connected with each other, with their children, and with the thousands who had turned out to share in the celebration. For William, there was a quiet pride in knowing that he was part of something bigger than himself, something that stretched back centuries yet remained relevant today. Kate, ever observant, noticed how Louis had fallen asleep in his car seat, his cheeks flushed pink from the cold. She reached over to adjust his blanket, her touch tender and maternal. As they approached Windsor Castle, the familiar silhouette of the historic fortress came into view, its turrets dusted with fresh snow. The castle looked like something out of a storybook, its grandeur softened by the gentle winter weather. Warm light spilled from its windows, casting a welcoming glow onto the driveway. Stepping out of the car, the royal family paused for a moment to take it all in. The quiet majesty of their home, the sense of sanctuary after a long day. A light breeze carried the faint scent of pine and wood smoke, hinting at the cozy fires burning inside. Inside the castle, festive decorations adorned every corner. Garlands of greenery wrapped around banisters, twinkling fairy lights framed doorways, and a towering Christmas tree stood proudly in the main hall, its branches heavy with ornaments and shimmering tinsel. The air buzzed with the hum of preparation as staff put the finishing touches on dinner arrangements. George, Charlotte, and Louis raced ahead, their earlier fatigue forgotten in the excitement of exploring the festively transformed rooms. "Look, "There's my stocking," Louis exclaimed, pointing to a row of embroidered stockings hanging above the fireplace. His siblings joined him, laughing as they inspected the names stitched onto each one. Dinner was a relaxed affair, a stark contrast to the formality of the Abbey service. The family gathered around a long table set with hearty dishes, roasted meats, seasonal vegetables, and steaming bowls of soup. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by bursts of laughter from the children recounting highlights of the evening. "I think I saw someone filming me when I waved," George said proudly, earning a chuckle from his grandfather. "Well, you are quite the star," King Charles replied with a wink. Even the adults couldn't resist indulging in the lightheartedness. Kate recounted how Charlotte had handed out candy canes to strangers, describing the delighted reactions she received. "She's going to be quite the diplomat," William teased, ruffling his daughter's hair. After dinner, the family gathered in the drawing room, where a fire crackled merrily in the hearth. Hot chocolate and mince pies were served, along with a plate of gingerbread cookies shaped like crowns, a playful nod to the occasion. The children nestled into plush armchairs, while the adults settled onto sofas, their post-dinner relaxation tinged with a sense of accomplishment. Outside, the snow continued to fall, muffling the world beyond the castle walls and creating an almost dreamlike stillness. King Charles leaned back in his chair, watching his grandchildren play with the gingerbread cookies. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the success of the evening, but for the continuity represented by this moment. Here was his son, preparing to carry the torch. Here was his daughter-in-law, embodying grace and resilience. And here were his grandchildren, the next generation, full of curiosity and joy. It was a reminder that traditions endured not because they were static, but because they evolved, adapting to new times while staying rooted in values that mattered. As the clock struck midnight, marking the official start of Christmas Eve, the family exchanged heartfelt wishes. "Merry Christmas," King Charles said softly, raising his cup of hot chocolate in a toast. "To family, to faith, and to the hope that unites us all." Glasses clinked gently, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Beyond the windows, the snow-covered ground sparkled under the moonlight, a silent testament to the beauty of the season. For King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Kate, the evening had been more than just a royal obligation. It was a celebration of unity, tradition, and love. As they prepared to retire for the night, the castle wrapped them in its timeless embrace, a sanctuary where history met hope. And outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing the world in peace, reminding everyone that no matter how much changed, some things would always remain the same.